We have a couple of ladies, MBA students of the Said Business School. We do have Nabilah and also Nikhita coming in, and both of them, please just have a seat. Both of them have been already involved. Nabilah with Deloitte, and Nikhita has been also with Ernst & Young in Mumbai. But I think what is really the most important thing is, you know, when a conference like that happens, you go into it and you listen. At the beginning, you're excited because you have expectations. Let's start with the expectations.
Okay, sure. So,
what did you expect?
Very similar to the debate that was discussed yesterday, I think one of my biggest expectations for this conference was understanding what mutuality really is, because I feel like it is a fairly esoteric term, one that is very difficult to pin down, and as a result, the measurement issues that come from there. So one of my expectations was to get a clear idea about what that is, and then from that, getting a really practical sense of what companies are doing to embed that in their businesses. So not leaving it just at an airy-fairy level, but then bringing that down to a pragmatic, practical sense. And then, being a South African, I was also particularly interested to understand how does this apply in a developing economy? Because some of the ideas seem like they would work perhaps in a more developed market, but where you have issues around inequality and greater challenges that developing economies face. It's quite interesting to see where that comes from. And I know Akhil had asked that question yesterday, so we'll explore that.
Yeah. Nikhita, your expectations?
So to be honest, I came to this forum with a fair bit of skepticism. It was about, okay, so what is this mutuality concept? We started with philanthropy at some point in time, spoke about CSR, then went on to say sustainability, then we spoke about shared values. So for me, mutuality seemed like just another concept that was, we were talking about just because it was in the moment. So I came with a fair bit of skepticism. Having said that, because I've worked in the social impact space in India and worked with communities where they have this major distrust towards corporations, I was really keen to know what some of the corporations had to say about some of the work that they were doing with communities and trying to rebuild that trust. So I was really keen to hear that. And another question in my head was, why now? What really motivates corporations to look at mutuality and responsible business? And what is really the motivation behind all of this?
So was it a waste of time or was it good? What do you... with these huge expectations and almost cynicism, I wonder, the highlights, what do you think?
So I guess the day and a half has been pretty much a whirlwind, because there have been amazing insights coming from across the board. And I think I'm probably leaving with more questions than answers, and that's probably good. A sign of a good development session here.
Yes.
I'm going to take a bit of an academic liberty, and I think Kate might appreciate this, but we had a class earlier this year called Rethinking Business. And in it, we kind of analyzed the whole idea of systems change, and what are the levers that you'd pull? It's a Danilo Meadows reading on trying to change a system, and I tried to apply that to looking at this whole idea of mutuality. And essentially, the biggest change would come from a paradigm shift in mindsets.
Sure.
And the last panel touched on this as well, and Jürgen had basically said it comes down to the individuals. But the more I probe this, the more I think that the mindset is really dictated by the measurement and the incentives that people have. So they may think they want to act in a certain way, but because of the way the incentives are set up, because of what we can actually measure, people are acting in a different way. So for me, it was quite interesting to see that, yes, we have made some progress in trying to understand that there are different types of capitals, and Mars is looking at social, human, natural capital. But trying to converge to a single bottom line, we haven't gotten there as yet. So, I'm not saying that we were going to come up with all the answers, but I feel like, for me, that would be the pivotal moment when a lot of the aspects would change. And then I attended the session on driving organizational change as well. Which was quite interesting. So we saw the Vodafone example of how they are spurring women empowerment, and it makes sense from a commercial perspective for them to have a greater penetration of mobile phones with females, simply because it would increase their market share. But also there were societal issues that they were addressing as well. And they told us about how they do that both inside and outside the organization. And what I really liked was the fact that they actually thought about, for one of their internal goals was to be one of the foremost employers for women, that when looking at the maternity leave factor, the cost of them not giving a favorable maternity leave option to females was actually very expensive. So it all came down to a commercial basis, which makes it a lot easier to motivate. But again, I asked the question about how does this then apply in a developing country context for the small medium enterprise. Exactly, like I think it was Akhil, where's Akhil? He asked the question about, when I'm up against so many difficulties as a young entrepreneur, be it in India or Africa or wherever it is, how do I reconcile that? And is there a first mover disadvantage, in trying to pioneer and move forward with this idea of mutuality? And then I think where we got to yesterday, and this is where I got to on this, was that there's a very big onus on larger corporations to provide the ecosystem, be it larger organizations from developed economies that are working in developing economies, to provide a space where this can happen in a mutually beneficial way.
Yeah, absolutely. And you were looking at leadership and management a lot, because it's something you're looking at, the highlights there.
So I really enjoyed the session yesterday with Mike Berry from M&S Plan A, where he spoke about, he said something really, really interesting, where he said that it's really not about regulations or legislations which have actually made them move towards being more responsible, but it's the market forces itself. He quoted Tesla, and he said that the emergence of disruptive and innovative models has really brought corporations to think differently about the way they do business. So I found that really interesting. So it's good to know that it's not an external force, but like from within the market itself, which is causing this change. With respect to leadership, what I thought was interesting, because that's something Maren said first thing in the morning yesterday, where she quoted middle management as one of the barriers to really look at working responsibly. So I think that's more of a question that I have. I do understand that we understand mutuality to some extent, but how do we really operationalize mutuality?
Right. Yeah.
So it brings back to, are we really in a position to explain to middle management, and as we go down the hierarchy, to really understand how we operationalize some of these things? So I think those are more like questions that I have from this session.
Well, okay.
Another session that I really enjoyed this morning, which was about the innovation economy and and economics of mutuality, and it was really good to hear. I mean, in fact, I was quite surprised to hear when somebody mentioned that they had not really thought about blockchain from the context or from the perspective of mutuality. So it actually brings out the kind of it actually shows us the incredible opportunity that there is to look at disruptive and innovative models to improve people's lives and reach to those bottom of the pyramid. So I think that's where the whole management aspect also comes in, where we have to really look at how our managements work differently to ensure that we use some of these, we leverage on some of these models.
Yes, and I wonder, when you go back into the corporate world after you've done your MBA, and this kind of conference, it seems that it has shifted, some emotions within the two of you. What are the key takeaways that you feel then equipped? And you just said, Nikhita, well, there's some strategies that I was missing. I need to still have tools to take away. But what are the key concepts you think you can really take out in the world and then push the envelope a bit?
So I think it was something that Professor Mayer had said yesterday, where he said that mutuality can't be incidental, it has to be intentional. And I feel like that idea permeated the discussions all the way through, that there has to be a clarity of purpose, that you don't do this by accident. And I think we see the example from Mars as well, where mutuality became one of the founding principles, but it wasn't just left at a principle level, it was brought down to practical business practices as such that make sense in a viable business model. So for me, I think it was getting the idea of clarity. And then the second point was also that this issue of mutuality is too big for one sector to look at alone. It's not a private sector issue necessarily exclusively, or a public sector common goods issue exclusively. Yeah. There's a need for the public-private collaboration and partnerships, but as Bertrand had mentioned earlier today, that it's not very easy, so there's a challenge. So I'm very aware of the fact that going into the corporate world, it's not going to be necessarily easy trying to get to that. I also wonder whether we need to start shifting our ideas of what is success and what's successful. in one of the conversations with Alistair yesterday, he was telling us about how he understands the idea of margins, where in old Israel, the idea of being profitable or having a margin was how much of your crop you left for the destitute to take from. And nowadays, we've just flipped the idea of it's how much we have for ourselves. And I wonder whether we need to just redefine the way we see ourselves as being successful, and that would permeate into the practices and the actions that we would take thereafter. And yes, I still have a certain level of skepticism, and I think it's largely because the idea of measurement hasn't been bedded down quite clearly as yet. But I do think that we are heading in the right direction. The idea of going up a cloudy mountain, I know I was mentioning one of the sessions yesterday, that where the summit is, but the path isn't clear.
Absolutely. So it is work in progress, and I think that was also made clear right from the beginning.
Correct, it is. So, I mean, it definitely leaves you with a sense of hope. But then also as millennials and future business leaders, you think to yourself, well, you can't just wait for the path to clear up. You have to do something.
Take responsibility.
Exactly. And so, like I know all my MBA classmates are here, I guess our responsibility is then to sort of push the envelope as we move into positions of power and influence, be it as a consumer or a business leader or an investor, an enlightened investor, to ask the difficult questions and be brave and sort of push the envelope so that we're looking at considerations beyond just the financial considerations.
Nikhita, how does that land with you?
So I have 3 key takeaways, and I must admit I was a consultant at some point in my life, so we always have, we always talk in terms of 3. Okay, so my first key takeaway is, like I said, I came to this session with fair bit of skepticism with respect to mutuality. I think that's been clear to some extent. It may be a limited, kind of incomplete definition, but for me, I equate mutuality with trust and with accountability. And that's been the common theme of all the sessions that we had yesterday as well as today. I think it's about building trust, and for that matter, rebuilding some of the lost trust amongst our customers, suppliers, in fact, even competitors for that matter, and other stakeholders. So that's I think, my first key takeaway. The second point that I actually have to make in terms of my takeaway is that I am still not 100% sure of how we're going to operationalize this. So I think we have a long way to go when it comes to operationalizing. And yeah, it's about taking responsibility. And as millennials and as future leaders, I think we're in a good position to actually to really take on that responsibility. I think this, and it's especially important because we're talking about applying mutuality in a case where we spoke about publicly owned companies having it all the more, making it all the more difficult for them to apply some of these concepts. We also spoke about emerging markets where the challenges are completely different. And we're also talking about the rapid pace at which change is happening. So whether regulations can really stay up with some of the change that's actually happening. And given that measurement is still, we still actually just have a financial measurement, and then we don't exactly have a social and a human reporting that actually happens. So given all of that, I feel we still have a long way to go when it comes to operationalizing. Finally, to end on a positive note, I feel that this particular forum has come at a really good time. We're at a point where, as MBAs and as future leaders, we're out there to go in the market, and we're going to be assuming positions of power. So it's up to us to really ask the difficult questions and challenge status quo. And what we've seen all through yesterday and most part of today as well, I think we've really taken on that responsibility pretty well. So.
Fearless and bold, this is how I like it. Thank you so much for your feedback. Thank you, indeed. Thank you. Excellent. So it seems that these kind of events do make a difference. Which is great, because the next generation is hopefully going to lead this way in this world in a bit of a more mutual sense, I guess. And now I'm going to hand over. It is for the closing remarks and launching the platform. Let me just quickly say thank you to all of you. Say goodbye. Thank you for having had me here as well. And my key takeaway, if I may say so, from this fantastic event is sustainability and the idea of mutual businesses is just another way of saying, survival of the fittest, but the approach is different. Yeah? And the approach is from trying to be the best in the world to be the best for the world. And that takes us quite a way. So thank you very much. Over to you.
Okay. Just before you go, Nabilah and Nikhita, you were brilliant. You were so brilliant. You're such a destructive technological force that you've completely eliminated anything that I could possibly say in the closing remarks.
Earlier lunch.
And I have, we've got some gifts to give to you. Thank you
Me as
very
well. Oh, thank you. Oh,
thank you
so
very much
No,
indeed.
thank you. Thank you for your trust. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. And if Kate and Alistair and is Clara still here, could you come forward and so that we can thank you as well? Thank you. Thank you very much. And Clara is not around?
Yes, Clara is here.
Clara is here. Oh, hello.
She
Great.
changed look.
And Natalie.
Natalie, yeah.
Thank you.
And that's it, right?
Yes.
Yeah, just before I close, I just would like to extend again a big thank you to Patricia and all the students. Actually, Patricia, it was more than facilitating. I think it was much more than that. It was sharing, nurturing, and catalyzing the debate. So thank you very, very much. So yesterday morning, Colin started with this provocation. That's the big elephant in the room that nobody spoke about when it comes to civilization is business. Business has become pervasive, but actually business existed before capitalism, and it will probably exist after capitalism. The issue is that business today, and over the last 50 years, has been in service of one form of capitalism, which is the financial capitalism. And the other issue is that big business has become so big that it is now affecting every single aspect of society. Our view is that capitalism needs not to be removed, but it needs to be completed, and to disrupt the notion of what success looks like. It's about to restore the role of business. And in order to do this, it will happen through a new breed of business models. Economics of mutuality is one of them. It will come through the new business leaders. And some of you are actually today going to enact this principle in your current and new business. It's about new performance metrics, new management practices, and also new forms of ownership. We are at a crossroad on multiple levels, and the digital revolution, the revolution of the knowledge economy, will not only support but also accelerate these changes. And this technology change actually is agnostic. It could be a curse, it could be a blessing. It all depends on our intentions of how to enact this technological change. So it goes back to the concept of values, driving value, driving action. So we are at an interesting point in time, and we emphasized this idea over the last 2 days. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Actually, I'm very, very pleased I am alive today. I wish I was 30 years younger to see the fullness of the changes that will happen. So it's about innovation. And I like to quote some of you who said eventually, the true innovation is not the technological innovation, it is a business innovation. Because it's about the innovation that will touch society in its deep fabric. So what are the next steps? The task is daunting. And as Martin said in his remark, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with others. So the next step we foresee, as with Mars, with Oxford, is in the context of creating a movement. So our intention is indeed to create an open platform to continue the research, because without knowledge, people perish. It's to accelerate the application, and I think there is a great momentum now to accelerate the implementation. The time is right, but also to train, share, and educate. Mutuality is contextual, and it's good that it be contextual. The notion of truth is always something that's frightened me. And there are different definitions of truth. The Greek definition of truth means that it doesn't change. It means that truth is written in stone, that you have a relationship with truth which is cold, based on law, based on the rule of law. This is how the Greek world defined truth, as a universal absolute that doesn't change, that actually crushes people, provides guilt and condemnation. The Semitic definition of truth is a word game. In Hebrew, it is amet, which actually means, met means death, something that doesn't change, that is blocked. And amet is like in English, it means the opposite of what doesn't change. So I would like to infuse here this definition of truth. The truth is not something that doesn't change. The truth is a living organism. It's a living principle that actually can change. There is some ambiguity in the truth. And that's what, this is this type of truth that makes us free, not the cold Greek truth. So mutuality is a context in which truth can actually happen. But it is contextual. It has to be adapted. So the platform hopefully will be a chance to explore other business ecosystem. We tested mutuality in a very specific ecosystem at Mars, and it worked. And it gives us great hope that actually this concept, even if it's kind of ambiguous, is actually a solution to the problem that we have in society. But if we test it in other ecosystems, it will have a different shape, a different form. It's a bit like the salt that you bring to your food. It brings a good taste, right? But it disappears. And this is actually the definition of a catalyst. It precipitates a chemical reaction, but disappears. So ask yourself, and maybe you can come to us at the end of the session, how you want to engage with us to become part of the salt of the earth. The last point is to educate. Indeed, there is a need now to educate the current and the new generation of managers how to manage this form of capital. We know that this capital exists, they are essential to the business, but we need to learn how to manage them. And it's like flexing new muscles. We said yesterday, we are capable as human beings to create social capital, create human capital, and do it in a business context. But it will require that we flex new muscles, and especially in the mind of the established management. There is a lot of unlearning in order to learn new skills. So what is the next frontier? Well, typically, in our view, and something that we shared a long time ago with Colin, is the financial sector. And I was extremely pleased to say that the financial sector is managing our money, not their money. It is our money. But it is where the big money is at the same time. And actually, we were extremely moved that so many financial people are already speaking the language of mutuality. So thank you so much for being so open to this concept of mutuality. But eventually, after we started to rediscover the natural laws of business, now it's time maybe to rediscover the natural laws of investment. And innovation is not what innovators invent. Eventually, innovation is what the market adopts. And you don't change the world with a little niche. You have to demonstrate value for money. And I like to finish with the saying that Jean-Christophe mentioned in his speech: you have to demonstrate values for money. So we are talking here of innovation, but it's a very old concept. In the end of the day, there is nothing new under the sun. We think we innovate. I don't think we innovate a lot. We keep relearning the natural laws of society. And I like to finish with one of the quotes which I actually, at a very certain point in my time, in my career, had a dramatic impact. I was that close to become an investment banker. That close. And I remember I had this extravagant offer from a firm not far from here. And I was very tempted, very, very tempted. I was 27 years old. I was married, had my family. And I tried to post-rationalize. I said, well, if I take this job and I make that amount of money, after like 5 years, I can actually do good. So I can do bad for 5 years, and then I can do good. And, you know, I've been reading ancient scriptures for all my life, and I think there is great wisdom in the old scriptures from either the Confucius or the Bible. And on the day I had to take a decision to say yes or no, I came across this passage. How much better to get wisdom than gold, and to choose understanding rather than silver. I turned down the offer, and here I am.
Well, we've come a long way over the last day and a half. And we heard in yesterday's debate how people in the room felt in some cases that the concept of mutuality was vague, ambiguous, unenforceable, and unoriginal. And let us just remember where we started from. We started from the notion of Milton Friedman saying the one and only social purpose of business is to increase profits. Well, that was wrong. Firstly, on the grounds that there isn't one and only one purpose of business. Secondly, that if there is a purpose of business, it is not just to maximize profits. And certainly, if there is a social purpose to business, it is not to maximize profits. And one of the key messages to come across is that companies have and should have a multiplicity of purposes. And those purposes should be about enhancing the well-being of their customers and communities, and in the process, producing profits. Profits are not, per se, the purpose of business. And that, I think, helps us to then define what do we actually mean by mutuality. And what's come across, I think, very clearly in this conference are three things. Firstly, it's about purpose. It's about defining what it is that business should be doing. And that purpose is one that can help to essentially determine the way in which business acts in a mutual fashion. The second is in terms of performance and measurement. And we've heard a great deal about the need to create effective measures of performance. And the third is in terms of the way in which that can be embedded in organizations. The real insight to come from the mutuality principle is that through pursuing social capital, human capital, and natural capital, one can increase the profits of firms. And that is the way in which one then makes this an essential component of institutional investment as well as of corporate investment. But it isn't necessarily the case that one can always rely on that relationship to ensure that companies are able to act in a mutual fashion. And the ability then to have an ownership base that supports the pursuit of mutuality is a key aspect of the delivery of that. And we heard about that this morning. And technology is a way in which business can become much more effective in the pursuit of those mutual benefits. Technological changes in the areas of automobiles, which are going to revolutionize transport, in energy, which are going to address environmental issues, in food, that are going to address problems of hunger, and in pharmaceuticals, that will have revolutionary changes for health. And we heard how blockchain will help to extend the boundaries of the firm, and that mutuality is really about embracing parties outside as well as within the firm, and thereby essentially diminishing the significance of the boundaries that at present determine the nature of the firm. But at the same time, those technological changes offer significant risks to business. One aspect of technology that wasn't mentioned this morning was artificial intelligence. And what artificial intelligence does is essentially to potentially, as Stephen Hawking has reminded us, no longer make us masters of our own minds. And certainly going forward, it is likely that we will no longer be masters of our markets as well as our machines. And that makes the notion of purpose an even more important one. That the significance of defining what it is that we want to get from our technology in the future is going to be a critical determinant of the way in which business acts in or against our social interests. So the significance of this is enhanced by technology, and the risks associated with getting this wrong are also intensified by technology. And what we want to do going forward is to take these ideas and to embed them in companies through, and this is what we're going to be doing as one of our immediate developments on this program, through introducing executive education programs to help to extend our understanding in the field of leadership of how relevant mutuality is to business. And what we'd like to do today is to call upon you, those of you who are interested in joining this movement, in helping to pioneer the education, to really partner with us in this program of executive education that we are going to be doing over the coming months, so that we will be able to develop programs that will help to transform the leadership that is needed in organizations going forward. And I hope that you'll take this opportunity then to work with us in helping to develop this series of executive education programs that we are going to be developing. And we're doing this with the view that when we come back in a year's time for next year's Responsible Business Forum, Making Business Mutual, on May the 11th and May the 12th of next year.
You want us all for your birthday again?
So that you can celebrate my 65th birthday. That we will then be able to say that we've taken forward this agenda of mutuality in a way in which we're going to be able to make it into a reality. So I very much hope that you'll all be with us on this journey and that we'll be able to see you again here next year. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank you all for having been here, stayed to the end. I'd like to thank all of our speakers, all of our panelists, all of those who have participated in putting together the program. There's one final student that I'd just like to mention and thank, and that's Megan Moore. Megan, could you come forward? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And just to finish off, what Bruno was saying about him nearly becoming a banker, I just add that I nearly became a management consultant. At the age of 27, I had the choice of either that or becoming an academic at a quarter of the salary. But my view was not that I could essentially do bad and then do good later on. But I would just try doing good for a few years, and then I could go off and make a huge money. And there's only been one problem. I've never got to stage 2.